Hey everybody, Robert with RC Archery, and you're watching Patreon Tier 2 only content. So this is the extra content for my Tier 2 subscribers. I appreciate your subscription and helping my brand and channel, whatever you may want to call it, in order to grow and be able to do things like what I'm going to give you today, which is a review over T.R.U's GOAT release. Now, I do want to apologize in advance. I don't have this release anymore. I've actually shipped it back to Lancaster Archery, who I purchased it from. And you'll understand why throughout this video as to why I did that and why I'm sticking with a T.R.U Fulcrum Flex. Now, I'm not going to dog T.R.U in this because the GOAT is an amazing release, and obviously I really like T.R.U's products. So I'm going to give you my candid responses on what I'm going to give you here, but I'm also going to give you the true value of this product and what I thought with an entire setup, thumb and a hinge, build quality, and everything about it. The videos as far as how to set them up, how to adjust them, how to change it from a thumb to a hinge, those videos can be found on Lancaster Archery's YouTube channel and also on T.R.U XL's YouTube channel as well. And they're great videos and they show you everything you'll need to be able to see on it. And then this video, I'm just going to be giving you the pluses and minuses on what I saw in the release and let you understand why I'm sticking with Old Faithful here in my release pouch. All right, so let's take a moment and I'm going to tell you the good about this release, what I liked about it, and what I enjoy about the way they set the release up. First and foremost, and the reason why I wanted to try this release, it's based off of the T.R.U HT platform. The blade is also based off this as well, their thumb release that they have. And what I mean by that is the shape of the release finger beds are the same between the blade, the T.R.U and the GOAT, or they're extremely similar, right? They're a little wider than what you would get with the Fulcrum Flex, a little bit wider than what you get with the HBC, but they're very comfortable. It's the most comfortable release that I've ever held in my hand to date. And if I could pick any release to make work perfectly for me, it would be an HT release. That's why I modified my HT3 Pro, the brass version, into a 2-finger release. I shaped the finger beds a little bit with it to make it exactly how I wanted, but it was still incredibly comfortable and I really loved it. Along with that, on this release, you'll notice that they're using the Flex system. The Flex system is like what they started using here on the Fulcrum Flex and the Abyss Flex, and it's just the other fingers that can come off here, the third and the fourth finger attachment that can move up and down independently of its own self. And then of course what I do with my releases and use them as a 2-finger with my R2 attachments here. So these just go on. These attachments fit on the GOAT release as well. I've had other people that have bought the GOAT that use these on theirs. I used it on the one that I had here when I was testing it out and setting it up. Fits perfectly, looks great. It's the same size as the Fulcrum Flex and Abyss Flex as far as the way that it sits on there. The other thing that I like about the release itself is its weight. The T.R.U GOAT is half brass that's coated in their Quicksilver coating, and then it's half stainless steel. So you get the best of both worlds there. But the overall weight and heft of the product is very similar to what I'm going to get on a full brass release. I prefer that because it seems like just like adding stabilizer weight to the bow lessens some of the movement. It makes it, for me, what I really like about it is I feel like I can set my hand in the release and anchor and start my shot much more consistently shot to shot with that heft of the release. Another good thing that I like about it is the thumb button on there. They've gone a little bit different route than some of their other buttons they've had in the past. This one's very similar to a Carter thumb button. It's still a 1/2 inch in diameter, but it has 3 different holes that are in the release and it offsets it along with their adjustment piece. I was a little bit concerned about this at first because when I use my Abyss Flex, I really like, depending on the way that I'm going to set it up and the way I'm going to use it, I like to use extension bars sometime. It has a 2 different version extension bar, so you can get it extra long, and then you can also run it straight up on the release. Now, the GOAT does come with the extension bar. It comes with the first set of extension bar with the release, and that'll be similar to like what you see with the Abyss Flex model. But I didn't find that I really needed that. I actually left it in the standard hole the way that it comes from T.R.U, and I just adjusted it kind of angled it around and slid it around to get it where I wanted to for my thumb. Now, the finger beds are grooved, second, third, fourth finger beds, the index is smooth, it helps you very much. The clip up at the top, when you're using it as a hinge, it is, there's a magnet up there, so it helps kind of bring it back into place, or you can flip it a little bit with your finger and it puts it back into place on its own. So it's very easy to set. I've come to a setup with the fulcrum that works just fine, but it's definitely a little bit easier than the fulcrum. No complaints from me at all on that. Head design, as far as the shape and the way it's being used for that feature, is amazing. And it also works really well as a button. It's right there whenever you go to press the button and cock the setting in place where you can go to fire it and load it and everything from that point. It's all self-cocking. It works really well. Really like those features of this release. When it comes to setting the goat up as a thumb release, which by the way is how it comes from the factory, I feel like T.R.U has hit it out of the park. It is by far the best thumb release I've ever shot, and I have shot some really great ones. From Carter releases, the Just Cuz, the Just Because, the Wise Choice, the Not To It, my T.R.U Abyss Flex that I still have and own and shoot some to this day, the Blade Pro that T.R.U offers. Those are all amazing thumb releases. This one's better, hands down. The reason it's better is for a couple different reasons. One, just the shape of the handle, it's comfortable. I talked about that. The self-cocking head is very cool on this release. The angle of the head of the release for a thumb release balances really well in your hand, which personally for me, I feel like balance in the hand on a thumb release where your fingers can kind of balance pressures and hold evenly is amazingly important, because it allows you to balance how the hook is placed on the loop. You get too much pressure, index or middle finger or outer fingers on a thumb release, no matter what release it is, it's going to change your point of impact some because of the torque forces that are going to be pulling the release or pulling the loop rather, one side or the other with the release. The hook that T.R.U uses is by far superior when it comes to a thumb release versus like the closure on a Wise Choice or the Not To It. That type of closure is very sensitive to torque within the fingers left and right and changing the point of impacts. But this release, again, it balances really well, it works really good. The thumb knob adjustment I talked about before, I love it, it works great. I went ahead and put my R squared, that square thumb peg that I have, and I used a 1/2 inch, 3/4, and 7/8 on it just to try different sizes and see how it felt. Fits perfect, works really well, the same. I really like the edges on those, so again, personal preference, I like that. The trigger on it is what makes it the best. That's what separates it from the other thumb releases. Straight out of the package, no adjustment needed on it. I set my thumb on it, I can put just a tiny bit of pressure on it like I like to do, and then I work through my shot, and it's crisp, it's responsive, you can get the travel completely taken out of it so it works off pressure. It's great. Super easy to adjust as far as the tension that you want to have in it. I played around with that a little bit when I use a square thumb peg, because for me, when I use a square thumb peg, I need a little bit more tension or it won't work the same for me. I get too timid on it because I have better leverage. And then the travel setting, I mean, it's easy to use on that. So when it comes to a thumb release, this release, it hits it out of the park. And if I was a thumb release shooter exclusively, I would buy this release and I would use it as my thumb release, no questions asked. It's great. So when it comes to a hinge release, which is what I'm using because I feel I'm most consistent with the hinge release, this is where things separate and change for me when it comes to the goat. Now, when I made a post on my Instagram channel about buying this, there was a couple people that commented on there. It feels weird as a hinge. I'm gonna let you try it before I give you my thoughts and let you see what you think of it. You know, use that and take that. Everybody has good and bad to say about stuff. I didn't put a ton of value in it as far as a precursor to what I was looking at going into it. But looking back on it now, I see what they're saying, right? They didn't tell me what was going on, but I have a really good clue as to what's going on. When it comes to a hinge release with the goat, it sucks. I hate saying that too, because again, I love the T.R.U products. I love Excel products. It's all I shoot. It's all I use. My bow is right back here. I have an Excel sight, the Achieve. This is the second ever Achieve that I've ever bought. The first one I had for 6 years, since it came out. I don't know how many years that's been, but the first year the XL Achieve came out, I had it. And I used it until now. And this is a new one. And the only reason I bought two is because for a while I had two separate bows set up and I needed two different sights. I like the carbon bar, it just looks a little bit better. But I still have the first sight and it still works great. So I love their products, I love their releases. Obviously, it's all I use. But they have some design flaws in a Hinge Release when it comes to how I'm going to use it specifically. And it's exaggerated more with how I use it, but I feel like the problem is there whether you use it as a 3 or a 4 finger, which is what I mean by how I use it. I use releases as a 2-finger release. And the reason that I'm looking at it as to why there's a problem with it is because of what makes that release great also makes it bad, and it's the head of the release. I am not 100% sure. I didn't work with it a whole lot and spend a lot of time with it. I've got a lot of tournaments coming up this month that I've been shooting, and didn't have time to vary too much from it, so I do apologize for that. But the head of the release is having issues either because of the magnet that allows it to self-reset the hook on there, which could be the problem, or it's just the angle of the head of the release, so how this sits on there along with the hook and not allowing it to separate when you're rotating a hinge. Because what I found is when I would hook it to the release, so when I would hook the release to the loop rather, and I would get to full draw and get to anchor, normally you rotate through and you can see here that the head of this release is moving as I'm rotating the release, right? You can see it here, it moves. On that release, when I rotated the release, the head of the release didn't move at all. The hook moved around my loop. I literally have never shot a hinge like the GOAT in my entire life. And it was very strange because what's the #1 rule of shooting a hinge? Draw it back with your index and your thumb, because if you don't, it will rotate and you'll punch yourself in the face, you'll send an arrow downrange, or you'll launch your arm back, whatever it may be. You'll pre-fire the bow. With the GOAT, I didn't try drawing it this way, but when I got to anchor, the way that I ended up having to shoot it, especially as a 2-finger release, is I completely took every bit of pressure off my index. I took the index off the release and cranked on the 2nd finger to rotate it. And eventually, what it happened is it hung on something with the loop and with the hook, and it allowed the head to start separating and coming open and fire the release. But man, it took some effort, and it did not matter if I adjusted it so hot that the release would be bottomed out hot where it just couldn't get any hotter. It did not matter if I adjusted it as far slow as it could go or anywhere in between. And I tried it in all aspects because at first I just thought it wasn't adjusting, honestly. I was making it faster and it was actually getting worse. And I thought, well, maybe I'm going the wrong way. So I looked at the paperwork again, and then I looked at the instructions, and then I even just started looking at the moon, and I could see the moon moving in the correct direction. It just doesn't work. And honestly, it could be the magnet. It could be the magnet being too strong and holding the head of the release together and not letting it separate so that it starts allowing the hook to go across the moon. Whatever it may be, for me, it was the deal breaker, which kind of sucks for me because I really liked that release and the way it felt in my hand, and I really wanted it to work bad. If they come out with new versions of it and adjust or fix the problem or whatever it is, I'm going to buy another one. It will hands down be my favorite release, especially if I want to shoot a thumb release, but just the feel and the way it is in my hand, I love it. It's the HT, which was my favorite by far. The reason I shoot the Fulcrum Flex over my 2-finger HT that I made is because I cannot get the HT fast enough to shoot it as a 2-finger the way that I like to. And that's just because it wasn't designed, it wasn't made to do that. It just doesn't work the same. With this Fulcrum Flex, I can get it plenty fast to shoot it the way that I want to as a 2-finger. I even have some extra adjustment and movement that I can have with it. But that's my take and my thoughts on the GOAT release. Again, I appreciate everybody for subscribing as a Patreon Tier 2 level. You may be the only group that gets to see this. I don't know that I want to put it out on my main channel and talk about it too much. I really do hate giving negative reviews because I don't feel like it tells the entire story. And because of being someone in the industry that makes my own products, whether it's this two-finger attachment, my thumb buttons, or the center shot tool that I'm making, I realize how difficult it is to design, produce, market, products, and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and mental and physical effort goes into that. So I hate saying anything bad about stuff, but at the same time, that's a super expensive release. You value my opinion, and I appreciate that, and I do feel it's my job to give you that information to save you the $284, whatever it is, close to $300 that it is on that release. But yes, that's my thoughts. Again, I appreciate everybody watching. I'll see you soon. Thank you.